we are your one go-to partner. You can rely on us. Trust is super important for us. So first of all, we generate around half of our traffic from paid channels and half of our traffic from organic channels. I do think that the impact of AI on content will become bigger and bigger. Why are customers using our product or have decided to become a Fin customer? But also, why have non-customers decided not to become a Fin customer? Educational, trust-building content, word of mouth, I think all of those are channels that are going to be increasing in importance.
Well, I'm very excited to host Jan Hansen today for the Future of Consumer Marketing podcast. Happy to have you, Jan. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me. Very excited.
Perfect. So for those of you who don't know you yet and who don't know Fin, maybe tell us 2-3 sentences about the company and obviously how you landed at the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with Fin. At Fin, we offer car subscriptions. And in the end, this means that we offer a flexible and all-inclusive way to use your own car. Yeah. So we offer contracts that are between 6 and 24 months long. And you get a car, but you also get everything that you need around the car. So the car is delivered to your doorstep as a customer. It's already insured. Maintenance is included. Tires are included. If you have any issues with the car or anything around the service, you call us. We are a single face for that offering. And yeah, that just makes using your own car simple, effortless, and also sustainable, because we have a significant share of our fleet fully electric, 30+%. And we compensate the CO2 emissions for the rest of our fleet.
Nice. And obviously, it's not a small startup. I mean, you've been around for some time, you've raised tons of money. So can you give us kind of some perspective on where the company is now?
Absolutely. And I think the number that we are most proud of over here is we have over 22,000 customers at the moment. That's the coolest number. And behind that is a team of right now around 300 people that puts all of this together. And I think numbers like fundraising, etc., they're always more of a means to an end. We're really proud of the customers that we have and their happiness.
Cool. Well, that makes sense. And out of curiosity, what are kind of the most popular cars like that people end up kind of subscribing to? Or I think the beauty about that is also you can kind of select. It's not like a rental car where you say, okay, I want to have a BMW, and then you end up with a Kia, right? In your case, you kind of get what you see, right?
Exactly. That's a great point, Roman. I think when you rent a car for the weekend, right, it doesn't really matter whether you get, let's say, a BMW or an Audi. If it's your car for an entire year or two, then most people do care about the brand and model and specs that they get. So we're very precise about that. And yeah, in terms of bestsellers, that always depends on sort of the right. Also, our current collaboration with OEMs and what's hot in the market. But for example, Fiat 500 Electric is one of our bestsellers for a long time. Also for basically the entire existence of Fin, a Jeep Compass was a really well running car.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then also Tesla for a certain period of time was super popular. So it varies, but
which one are you driving?
I currently drive a Hyundai Ioniq 5, so also
nice.
Fully electric. It's a great car. I'm a big fan.
Fun fact: I earlier this year did a road trip to Arizona and California, and I was driving in that Palisade. It was amazing. It was like a rocket ship, so convenient. Yeah. So I'm impressed how far Hyundai has come.
I agree. They're a great brand that we're also going to be collaborating with for a long time, I believe.
Cool. And so tell me, why kind of the one thing that I love to ask about new business models, like why now? Like why is this business model coming into hyper growth mode now in the last few years? Why not before? What's been the big trend or shift on the consumer side?
Yeah, great question. So I think there are three megatrends, I would say, that, or trends that we are at the perfect intersection of, right? I think the first one is offline to online. Yeah, I think more and more products are being sold online, fully online, right? So e-commerce, I think, is becoming an increasing topic in almost any industry. And actually, if you look at e-commerce penetration rate in the automotive industry, that is still in the low single digits, right? So how many cars are either bought, leased, or subscribed to fully online? So that's one. The second one is ownership to access. Yeah, I think ownership is becoming less and less important to many people, at least or definitely to younger generations. And then third, within the automotive industry, particularly the trend from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles.
Okay, nice. And so talking about marketing, obviously, and how you think about that. I mean, obviously, the product that you're selling is as high AOV as it gets, right? So it's not like you're selling smartphone cases for $3.99 on Amazon, where you don't need to think about brand building and trust and credibility. And obviously, your business model is also quite new, right?
Yes.
So how did you think about all of that when kind of contemplating how to really push Finn Auto as a brand?
I think you're spot on, right? When you think about subscription models, or it just in general, right? The what people spend their money on. If people have a car, that is typically right up there with the most expensive items that they tend to spend money on, yeah, and most or highest recurring items. So that's why also for us, since we do offer the all-inclusive aspect, right? We are your one go-to partner. You can rely on us. Trust is super important for us, yeah, and that also has been a big part of our, let's call it, brand identity from the start. Yeah, we always wanted to be your reliable partner.
How did you build that trust? Because obviously it's easier said than done. Like, what were the marketing plans? What were the messages? Like, how did you go about it?
I think, to me, trust in the first place doesn't even start with marketing, but it starts with the product. Yeah. So when you go to a website and the website is not fully working, and you click on buttons and then you get error messages, or you see links that lead nowhere, then to me as a consumer, that will cause doubts whether the car and the operational service around it that I'm going to get is actually working, if the website isn't even working. Yeah. So that's always been a big focus of us, just a high quality user experience, and a clean website and reliable checkout flow, etc. Yeah. So I think that's where we started. And then I think, in terms of messaging, I don't think we've really always more emphasized the simplicity of our offering than purely the reliability. Yeah, and I think reliability is implicit to some extent in simplicity. But I think reliable is also something that is not really emotional. And I think good brands allow you to build an emotional connection with them. Yeah. And if something is simple, it just works. That's something that at least me makes me happy.
Okay. And in terms of kind of marketing mix, if you can kind of walk us through how you think about the different channels, like what are maybe, so what's the general distribution in your spend? How you think about that in terms of upper funnel, lower funnel?
So first of all, we generate around half of our traffic from paid channels and half of our traffic from organic channels. Yeah, and then when we look more closely at the paid bucket, SEA is a big one for us, the biggest one, and then also Meta is another very relevant channel for us. And I think the entire, right, and I'm assuming we're going to get into a bit more details later on, the entire topic around lower funnel versus upper funnel, to me, really is something that is also very phase specific for companies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so far, we have had a lot of focus on intent and high intent customers. And I think there are multiple intents that are super relevant for us. Customers that are looking for a car quickly, That's something that we can supply much better than, let's say, a typical leasing company, or customers that are looking for a more flexible solution, or customers that are looking for an all-inclusive solution, or customers that are looking for specific brands and models, right? All of those high intent customers, we've done, I would say so far, a pretty good job at showing or targeting them and showing them relevant ads that also convert them. And this has been, I would say, the biggest part of our growth, at least on the B2C side so far. And we are actually right now in the phase where we say, hey, we're still meeting our targets and we're performing well against our targets with that strategy, but we're also starting to diversify more towards the upper funnel, and are actually just now starting to invest more into awareness.
Okay, so how does that look like? Is that going to be a Super Bowl ad or just TV? Like, how do you think about awareness?
Yeah, so we're not quite there yet with the Super Bowl ad, but TV is a channel. We went live on TV almost 3 weeks ago, so that's still very new for us.
Linear TV or more the streaming providers?
Linear TV.
Okay.
Linear TV, and in general, right? I think we do believe a lot in just testing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we try to be very explicit with even of course, right? SEA campaigns are super easy to test and optimize, and you get data super quickly. I think the more you move up in the funnel, the more vague the data gets, and also the more or the longer it takes to collect some data. But still, we try to be super clear about our hypotheses, about how we measure success, and then incrementally spend more or expand our investment in certain channels when we see first positive signs on the success measurements that we've defined.
And then maybe one question that is so hard to answer, and I'm pretty certain that I never got a good answer for that until now. Maybe you'll be the first one, but you have so many different touch points, right? With customers and potential customers require so many different touch points. What's the way of measuring and attributing kind of the weight of each single touch point? How do you think about that? Because I don't know how many touch points on average a customer needs to kind of convert for you guys. Is it like 5, 10, 20? But you kind of attribute it across the whole journey, right? That's what.
Roman, great question, and I'm not sure whether I'm the one to give you the silver bullet here today. I would say this, in my opinion, on the one hand, understanding your customers and right, what touch points do they have, and what leads them to in the end converting or not converting is super relevant for any business, and it's of course also super relevant for us. At the same time, I sometimes think that with attribution, less can also be more, because I've seen at other companies super complex attribution models being built with multi-touch, and then you start working on the individual weights of each touch point, and you try to optimize the model itself. And in the end, I frequently see very little incremental improvement over a super simple, let's say, first touch or last touch. And I sometimes call models first touch plus or last touch plus, right? Maybe you use first touch, but then of course, if someone redeems a voucher code, you attribute some weight to that. Yeah. And so that's how we currently do it. We keep it simple. We know that it's flawed, but we try to invest our time into actually moving the needle on other areas where we currently see a much bigger impact than building a very, very complex attribution model.
No, that makes total sense. And is there a particular marketing channel that's surprisingly effective for you guys? Like, is there something where you say that's the secret sauce, or that surprised you in terms of effectiveness?
Secret sauce is a strong word. When you say surprise, the first thing that comes to my mind is we recently tested some student benefit platforms in Germany. And you'd think, right, car subscriptions still are a relatively high ticket item. And so students are maybe not necessarily your perfect target group, but those were surprisingly effective. And of course, we're not going to grow to thousands of customers through a student benefits platform. But I was at first skeptical about the test, but then when the team came back with the results, or the first results, it worked well, and now we've actually onboarded a second one, and are taking it from there. So that was one recent example that surprised me.
Cool. And how does influencer marketing actually work for those big ticket items? Because obviously for beauty or even travel, right? For those lifestyle and categories, it's been one of the big growth drivers.
Yeah,
for years. How does it work for you?
So the interesting thing with influencer marketing for us is we've seen with some influencers, it's worked incredibly well. And those were typically two types of influencers. Either they were sort of financial advice influencers, right? That talk about wealth management or insurances, right? All of these, let's call them financial tips and tricks. And some of those have worked really well for us. Or just authentic, I'd call them lifestyle influencers, with a target group, I would say, in their mid to late 30s or even 40s. So those have worked well. And then we've tested other influencers that have worked not really well. And we are also building from here. I would say one general trend that we are definitely seeing is the more organic the content, the better.
Yeah,
I think the times of just really paid ads. Hey, I'm this person you trust, and I'm clearly being paid for this. And here's my here's why you should get a Finn auto, or here's the voucher code. I think those are already working less, and they will continue to work less well, I believe, just because consumers more and more realize what is being paid for and what is not.
Let's talk about influencer marketing. So obviously, this works really well for beauty products, lifestyle products, travel. I wonder how this works for big ticket items. In your case, do you see the same effectiveness, or do you apply it differently?
Yeah. So we've seen it work well with some influencers, and we've not seen it work well with others. And this is something where we're still on a learning journey. Where we've seen it work well is with people or with, for example, financial advice influencers, right? That put out educational content, and also with some lifestyle influencers that align well, where their target group aligns well, or their followers align well with our target group, which is sort of mid to late 30s, early 40s, right? And what we see more and more there is that organic content becomes more and more important, and that whatever format we use is authentic, and is authentic for the content that these influencers typically put out. Yeah, that's how we currently look at influencer marketing.
Talking about AI, that's obviously big in everyone's head, especially for all things marketing. How do you use it for your marketing strategy, for the execution, also internally?
So where we currently use it a lot is, of course, on content generation. I think there it's already made a big difference in just the efficiency that you can have there. We use it for some of our organic content, but also for CRM. And then I think in the future, it'll be very interesting to see. I do think that the impact of AI on content will become bigger and bigger, right? And I don't think we're too far away from actually some creatives that typically a designer would come up with, maybe being created by AI, or even moving content. Yeah. So I think that those are the next steps. And then to what extent it will really impact, or when it will impact paid marketing and steering of performance marketing campaigns, we'll see. We certainly don't use it in that way yet. But I also think that could be an interesting application in the future.
Cool. And then talking about kind of product market fit, who are kind of the main customers, or what's the customer segment that you focus most on when it comes to tailor your marketing messages?
I'd like to give a sort of a two-folded answer to this. One, how do we look at it today, and what are our customer segments or our target groups today? But then also, I think this is an interesting topic because we're currently actually working on revamping our customer segmentation, and there may be some interesting thoughts there for your listeners as well. So we currently view our target group as people in their 30s and 40s. They typically come from the rural areas around German or large German cities. Yeah, they typically are in the early stages of having a family. We tailor a lot of our marketing to people who get their own car for the first or second time, right? And maybe are not yet super experienced with getting insurance and registering a car, and maybe they just moved out of the city center to the more rural areas because they're starting a family, etc. Yeah, so I would say that has been our core target group on B2C marketing. At the same time, right, talking about improving that understanding, what we've realized is that our segmentation has been very descriptive so far and very much based on demographic characteristics. And what we're actually currently doing is we are coming up with a customer segmentation that is behavior and attitude based. And so we're really looking at how are customers currently interacting with our product, why are customers using our product or have decided to become a Finn customer, but also why have non-customers decided not to become a Finn customer. Yeah, and from there we're developing basically around a jobs to be done framework. What different behaviors or behavior groups do we see in customer interactions with our product? And then I have a strong conviction that this will allow us to identify clear value propositions per segment. And then such a value proposition is much more tangible for any marketing activity than, I would say, our current, I think the more accurate description is actually persona than customer segments could ever be.
Okay, cool. And who are kind of, because obviously you don't have a competitor in your very specific domain, right? But if you zoom out, who are you competing most with? Is it kind of buying a car? Is it just staying with the bicycle? Is it taxi? Is it public transport? Like, who's the biggest competitor there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we typically see is that the majority of our customers, or a significant share of our customers, makes a decision between becoming a Finn customer or leasing a vehicle. Yeah, so I would say that sort of leasing as an option is the biggest financing channel or ownership channel of a car that we compete with.
Okay, cool, interesting. So obviously the automotive industry has been all over the news this year for actually the last 2 years for all types of different reasons. It's a bit like Shark Tank, right? So Chinese competitors coming up into Europe and US, tariffs, and the whole drama around EVs. So kind of how did all of this impact you? Because you have a business to run, and growing a startup to a grown-up is already hard, but then you have a lot of different dynamics happening in the overall industry. Can you share a bit how that impacted your journey, also strategically, but also it creates, I guess, a lot of uncertainties with consumers, right? What should I do? What should I buy? What should I rent? What should I subscribe? How should you navigate all of this?
Great question, Roman, and one I think that we could talk about for a long time. I think so. How did this impact us? And you are absolutely right. The past, I would say, 2 years, maybe even 2.5 years, have been incredibly volatile if you look at the automotive industry overall, and more volatile, I would say, than any period in the history of the automotive industry. Maybe a one sentence background for your listeners. What happened during COVID is that due to COVID, due to shutdowns, production significantly decreased of cars, which drove up the prices of used cars. And then once COVID slowed down,
or great for you guys, because the price of used cars went up, so I'd rather just subscribe, right?
Yes and no. So I'll get to the impact on us in a second, and then just to close out that thought, once COVID became more and more under control, prices, production increased again, but then actually we also ended somewhat of an economic downturn already, and so production went up, demand went down, and the residual values came down very, very quickly. Yeah, and so in our business model, we buy the cars. Yeah, so we have direct agreements with the manufacturers of the vehicles, and we buy the cars. And by simply buying the cars in the first place, we take on that residual value risk. Yeah, and so that's to answer your question. When the prices went up initially, there wasn't such a bad thing for us because we had bought cars, we had them on our balance sheet, and then they went up in value. But then also when they went down a lot again, that was difficult for us. And then of course also the production shortage didn't just affect the overall market, but it of course also affected us. So lots of our deliveries were delayed. We had a more difficult time to get cars. Now, how we've reacted to this volatility strategically is that we've said, all right, we will only buy cars if we at the same time can also pre-sell them, and thereby basically pass on the residual value risk to someone else. Yeah, and of course for that we're also sacrificing some margin for us, some potential margin, but we are in the business of putting together a great subscription experience and making money on that subscription, not on gambling on residual values. And so that was the strategic decision that we made. At the same time, we did lose a lot of money on some of the cars that we had on our balance sheet while residual values came down, and particularly also some electric vehicles. Still, we're highly convinced that electric mobility is the future, and we are doubling down on it. And so we continue to work with EVs, and I can elaborate a bit why EVs I think are a great fit actually with our business model. There are some interesting stories there.
Yeah. But that's very interesting because what you're saying is that for the first time, because of all of the supply chain disruptions, the residual value and the write-offs that were so predictable over the past few years started fluctuating, right?
Exactly.
And then even more so for EVs, I guess.
Yes.
Where everyone's thinking twice, should I really buy an EV car? Because it might be worth something in 5 years, might be worth nothing. So that should kind of play into your cards, right? Because you say, don't worry about it, just subscribe with us. You have the EV experience, and then you don't have the risk of your EV or the battery or so going bust and cars worth nothing. Is that a correct way to think about it?
You put it perfectly. Yeah, I think, and even right, the residual value piece is one thing. Yeah, and some people I think are aware of this. I would even say many consumers are not necessarily aware of this. You don't constantly monitor residual values of cars and how they develop when you have a car and you're happy with it. But I would say, in addition to not taking on residual value risk as a consumer, you can try out the car. Yeah, for many people, it's still, when they now get an electric vehicle, it's the first time they get one. And so they want to see, hey, how do I like an electric car in general? How do I get along with the charging infrastructure and everything else that comes with electric mobility? So that's where we also frequently say we offer the longest test drive possible. Yeah, and so if you're not sure whether an EV makes sense for you, just get one from Finn for 6 or 12 months. And afterwards, you'll know, and many people are a fan afterwards.
It's a very nice way to put it. That model, the business model, makes so much sense. Would that also work in the US?
Yeah, that's a great question, Roman. And I'm highly convinced it would. Yeah, I think when looking at some of the things that or the products that work well in the US, right, and it typically is frequently convenience driven, which our product very much is. And also the US are a huge automotive market, still the largest automotive market in the world. I'm absolutely convinced it would. We actually gave it a shot already. We went live with our B2C offering in the US in 2022. And now, for strategic reasons of the company, I've decided to pause that. But I am very optimistic that at some point in the future, Finn will be returning to the US.
And how would you localize or adapt kind of your strategies then for the US, for instance, versus what you learned in Germany?
So I think really from a marketing perspective, something that we have learned is that it is very, very, very important to understand local needs for or local preferences in terms of brands and models. Yeah, and what's considered a premium brand in Germany may not be considered a premium brand in the US or any other country, right? And vice versa. So really understanding consumers, understanding consumer behavior and preferences, that is something that we would certainly take into the US. And I think that even extends beyond just the consumer. There are some structural differences in, for example, what influence dealers have in the US versus Germany, and how sales channels are set up for the OEMs in the US versus Germany. So all of that we certainly take into account.
Okay, cool. I mean, the podcast is called Future of Consumer Marketing. So we also absolutely have to talk about kind of trends and what the future of consumer marketing actually is. So what are kind of the big predictions from your side, or the things that you're already maybe leveraging that will shape how you think about consumer marketing?
I'm not even sure whether so it certainly is the future. And I actually think from spending some time in the US and then comparing that to Germany, I found it super interesting how much more text messages, or in Germany, WhatsApp, or in Europe in general, WhatsApp, how much more that is being used in the US in marketing versus in Europe. And I think that is something that over the next years we will see more and more of. I also think that the importance of organic content, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, is only going to increase, right? So authentic content around a brand, maybe educational, trust-building content, word of mouth. I think all of those are channels that are going to be increasing in importance, whereas the classic performance marketing, I would probably say is rather decreasing in importance.
Cool. No, I very much agree on that. And then one last question I'd like to ask though is there any consumer brand that you really look up to that really kind of blew your mind over the past year, that everyone should kind of try to look and learn from?
So in all honesty, what I'm really interested in is personally is sort of the entire health. You can even call it longevity space. Yeah, I think that's a strong word that some people like, others don't. But I think there are some super interesting brands that have managed to build up a very successful business purely by developing a strong brand. Yeah, and the first one that comes to my mind there is Athletic Greens with their AG1 offering. Independent of the product itself, I think what they've done with the brand is very, very strong.
Yeah, they're all over the channels, right? So
yes, exactly. You can't miss them. Yep.
100%. Well, that's a good one. Amazing. This has been a really fun conversation. I think I and a lot of people listening in learned a lot. Let's keep in touch, and thank you again for joining.
Great. Thanks for having me, Rowan. It's been a pleasure.